It is one of the most daring and devastating Ukrainian attacks on Russian troops since the start of the war.
Sources say the drones were hidden in custom-made wooden crates.
This took a year and a half to prepare. Far from Ukraine's borders, an attack of astonishing audacity.
%71% of people watching still haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, ask yourself this: why are you letting YouTube's algorithm describe what you see? Because today, we're diving into a military operation so bold, so strategic, that it might just redefine warfare itself. Operation Spiderweb, 117 drones, 5,000 kilometres behind enemy lines, 7 billion in damages. Now let's take a look at what's being said by the press, shall we? Right, let's have a butchers at the Billy Bullshit Company. I mean the BBC.
It is one of the most daring and devastating Ukrainian attacks on Russian troops since the start of the war. Tonight, President Zelensky said his forces used 117 drones in strikes on Russian airbases from deep inside Russia itself, targeting warplanes, including strategic bombers. Now, the scale of the operation is remarkable, with the strikes hitting at least...
When he says remarkable, that's, to me, huge. Absolutely huge. It really is. You don't underestimate this stuff at all. You really don't.
At least 4 airfields from western Russia across to Moscow and reaching the country's far east, thousands of miles from Ukraine. The operation, codenamed Spiderweb, comes on the eve of planned peace talks between Ukraine and Russia in Turkey tomorrow. Paul Adams.
Oh, they timed that really well, to be honest, because, you know, they're going into peace talks with not a lot to offer as it stood, all right? And now they've just absolutely thrown every last piece of paper on that table up in the air. Do you know what I mean? Have that.
Adams has our top story from Kiev.
Far from Ukraine's borders, an attack of astonishing audacity. Russian strategic bombers picked off one by one by a fleet of...
This is mad footage, by the way. Mad footage. Look at it.
...drones. Ukraine calling this Operation Spiderweb, personally overseen by President Zelensky.
I mean, to put this into context, right? Imagine trying to get even just any footage at all from somewhere like Bryce Norton. Do you know what I mean? That's in there. That's in the camp. That's behind the wire. That is like, what are you going to do about this? Do you know what I mean? That is, oof. It's a dream.
Kiev's boldest attacks so far, a reminder, despite Russia's overwhelming strength in numbers, that Ukraine is a resourceful, determined enemy. Sources say this took a year and a half to prepare. Dozens of drones smuggled into Russia, stored on wooden pallets, loaded onto trucks, driven to distant airbases and launched remotely. Swarms of drones picked up on social media from Siberia to the Arctic Circle. At a petrol station north of Irkutsk, a glimpse of the operation in progress. With smoke already rising behind, a drone emerges from the truck and heads off to...
It's brutal, absolutely brutal.
Moments later, another, and gunfire as police officers try to bring it down.
Yeah, good luck with that then. I'm telling you now, good luck with that. I mean, this is clever stuff. This is proper clever stuff.
It was an attack astonishing in its audacity on multiple military sites across Russia. What we know is that the Olena airbase near Murmansk in the northeast of Russia, near Finland, was hit. There were also attacks to the southwest and northeast of Moscow. And far to the east, all the way over here, over 4,000 kilometres from the front line.
I mean, they've thrown that all over the place, haven't they? They've proper done a number there, haven't they?
Deep in Siberia, where it was confirmed that this remote airbase in Belena was hit. And it's here that this incredible footage was captured, showing the destruction of planes on the tarmac. These are the drones that were used in the attack, thought to be quadcopters with 4 rotors, relatively cheap and domestically made. The bombs they carried didn't need to be big if they were targeted so precisely. Ukraine says 117 drones were used, each with its own pilot. Sources say the drones were hidden in custom-made wooden crates that were taken over the border and driven.
But you don't need to have the brains of a rocket scientist either to fly these drones. I'm going to tell you that now. A lot of it is done by the drone. It stabilises itself. It counteracts all sorts of things like high wind and all that sort of thing. They are proper good bits of kit now. I can fly one, do you know what I mean? And I got the coordination of a handcraft crab, like, do you know what I mean? So yeah, I can fly one.
On trucks to near the targets and then launched remotely.
There's certainly been a degree of mythology in Russia that the motherland is safe and no enemy will be able to harm it. Well, Kyiv has shown that that's not true. They can reach anywhere. The fact that Ukraine was striking thousands of kilometers away from the front line means basically Russian military planners now, their mind has to just be paranoid from the outside.
Just think about that as well, right? Because he's right there with the paranoia thing. Like, do you know what I mean? Where's it coming from next? How are they going to get in? Is it going to come in by sea? Is it going to come in? It's just a thing. It's such an absolute blow. Do you know what I mean? It really is. It's proper.
Ukraine says it's destroyed 40 Russian bombers, more than a third of the Russian fleet capable of carrying cruise missiles.
I mean, that's a bomber. As we said earlier, that's a fair few quid's worth of kit, that, do you know what I mean? And they're just smashing them up for fun.
The aircraft damaged include the Tupolev Tu-95 strategic bomber that can launch up to 8 missiles. The Tu-22 long-range bomber was also targeted, as well as the A-50, seen as the eyes and ears in the sky, Russia's early warning and control aircraft.
I mean, those A-50s are a proper bit of kit, do you know what I mean? That's like, yeah, you don't put that together for less than gazillions, like, do you?
Now, the White House tonight said they didn't know about the attack beforehand. Operation Spiderweb was overseen by President Zelensky himself. He said Ukraine had an Operation HQ inside Russian territory, located right next to an office of Russia's Secret Service. Now, and said that the coordinated attack was achieved solely by Ukraine. Clive.
Absolutely, mate, honestly, to be actually behind enemy lines, properly embedded, in sight of everybody, and doing that sort of destruction, you cannot underestimate how insane that is.
All right, Ellie, thank you. Ellie Price there. Let's rejoin Paul Adams, who's live in Kyiv for us now. Paul, this is a big deal, no question about it. And the timing, surely no coincidence, given those peace talks that are due to take place in Turkey tomorrow.
Yeah, Clive, look, it is pretty hard to exaggerate the sheer audacity of what the Ukrainians have just done. You know, we're used to stories of ingenuity and determination, the sinking of the Moskva warship in 2022, the truck-borne attack on the Kerch Bridge the same year, and just a month ago, using missiles mounted on maritime drones to shoot down a Russian jet. These are...
I mean, this really is David and Goliath type stuff, like, do you know what I mean? They are having to employ every last bit of wit and nerve and outside of the box thinking that they can lay their hands on, because they don't have the hardware, they don't have the kit, the money, the thousands of people for resources and all that sort of stuff. You don't underestimate what sort of a job they're doing here, really don't.
All extraordinary feats of engineering and enterprise, but what we've seen today tops all of that, and the Ukrainians are not surprisingly cock-a-hoop. But there is a political message here. A colleague of ours from the Ukrainian service said that he was recently in conversation with a member of the government who told him that the problem with Washington was that the Americans had already decided that Ukraine had lost, and that the Trump administration's entire strategy was based on that assumption. Well, as the negotiators head back to Istanbul for another round of negotiations over a ceasefire, what Ukraine is saying loudly and emphatically is, if you think we're done, think again. Donald Trump may famously...
That is a massive message, to be fair to Trump, all right, because looking at it through a normal, conventional set of eyes, you would be thinking to yourself, they're pretty much spent, you know, they're out of cash, they ain't got that much money to throw at this, they can't do this, they can't... Because their thinking process has taken them so far out of the box, forced into that position by adversity, by the way. Great lesson to be had there alone, all right? That's what's enabled this for them, it really is.
think we do not have any cards to play, but look what happened today. We certainly do.
All right, Paul, thank you for that. Paul Adams there live in Kyiv.
Right, that's it. I'm going to have to summarise this myself, all right? Right, we've just seen what the press are saying. But here's our summary. On June the 1st, 2025, Ukraine launched its most ambitious drone strike yet, Operation Spiderweb. This wasn't just a raid, it was a deep penetration and a psychological shockwave. 117 drones deployed from fake cargo trucks, hidden in plain sight and driven across 5,000 kilometres of Russian territory by unwitting Russian drivers. Once in place, the trailers opened remotely, released swarms of drones, and then self-destructed to avoid detection. The outcome? 4 Russian air bases struck simultaneously, up to 41 military aircraft destroyed, including Tu-95s, Tu-22M3Ss, and the rare A-50 surveillance platform. Estimated cost to Russia? $7 billion. Strategic aviation crippled with 34% of their long-range cruise missile carriers taken out. Kaput. But the real genius, it didn't stop at destruction. Ukraine announced how they did it. Why? Because the operation wasn't just a physical strike, it was a psychological warfare. Now, every cargo truck inside Russia is a potential threat. Every driver a suspect. Moscow is choking in its own supply chain, halting road freight, pulling trucks over, and causing gridlock. Road transport makes up to 70% of Russia's cargo system. Ukraine didn't just bomb aircraft, they bombed the reality of an entire infrastructure. This is asymmetric warfare at its sharpest. You don't need to match Russia plane for plane, you just need to make Russia mistrust its own roads. And the maths? Brutal. Cost of one drone, $5,000. Average damage per drone, nearly 60 million. Return on investment per drone, 11,965 to 1. This isn't just a military success, it's a case study in cost-effective strategy. So what can we learn from this? 1. Low-cost, high-impact warfare is here to stay. Nations don't need trillion-dollar defence budgets just to reshape a battlefield. Number 2. Psychological operations now begin with logistics. Trust, paranoia and mobility are new war fronts. 3. We're watching the birth of a human-less battlefield. Drones, AI coordination, remote deployment. This is the future, where soldiers aren't the ones crossing the borders anymore. Add to that the one final twist. China has stopped selling drones to Ukraine while still supplying them to Russia. Zelensky claims China representatives are even helping manufacture drones on Russian soil. So this conflict isn't just versus the West, it's turning into a proxy tech war and AI and drones as the frontline troops. And if you're still doubting how fast war is changing, consider this. That operation that cost Russia $7 billion was delivered in 5 minutes from robots inside their own territory. And if you want to hear the conversations we can't discuss openly, join our membership for just 16 pence a day on Force TV Plus, and you'll get the full scope.